More than 1,000 engineers spent years building it, a machine so massive it could carve its own city beneath the earth. Designed to pierce the deepest layers of rock ever reached by human technology, it was meant to prove Japan's dominance in underground engineering. But when the machine was finally put to the test, it didn't just break records. It broke what physicists said was impossible. Beneath a restless nation. Japan has always lived with the ground trembling beneath its feet. The country sits on the Ring of Fire, where 4 major tectonic plates grind and collide, constantly reshaping the islands. Earthquakes are very frequent in Japan, which experiences around 1,500 tremors per year. The people have grown used to the gentle vibrations that pass through their walls, but scientists have long known that what happens beneath Japan is far from ordinary. In recent years, Japan placed a network of deep Earth sensors beneath Tokyo Bay and around Mount Fuji to monitor underground activity. Before long, the instruments began detecting signals unlike any normal earthquake. Instead of sharp tremors, they recorded slow, steady pulses that repeated for days at a time. What made it even stranger was how deep the signals came from, far below the level where earthquakes usually form. At those depths, the rock should be so hot and tightly compressed that no movement is possible. Many scientists assumed the sensors were malfunctioning, but a few argued the opposite, that something entirely new was stirring far beneath Japan's crust. The strange readings reached government offices quickly. Inside the Earthquake Research Committee, analysts warned that a single deep rupture in that zone could trigger a chain reaction capable of disabling the national power grid and halting the high-speed rail network that connects the entire country. The findings were shared with the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, where senior officials began drafting an emergency plan. Publicly, the plan was presented as a standard earthquake resilience initiative, focused on updating underground safety systems. Privately, it aimed to do much more. According to several accounts, the ministry wanted to send a probe directly into the heart of the unstable zone to learn what was happening there. It would require a machine that could survive heat and pressure that no human technology had ever endured. Many physicists insisted the goal was unrealistic. Japan's crust turns partially molten only a few kilometers below the surface, making traditional drilling impossible. Any standard boring head would melt within minutes, and the stress would crush even the most reinforced steel casing. No known material or system could stay intact long enough to reach that depth, but a few engineers refused to give up. Specialists from Hitachi Zosen, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and Riken Laboratories joined forces to design a different kind of machine. Instead of using blades or mechanical drills, they proposed a hybrid plasma magnetic system that would cut through rock using controlled energy fields. According to reports, early prototypes melted through volcanic basalt without sustaining any damage. The proposal received quiet approval under the codename Project Kaguya. The name, taken from an ancient tale about a moon princess who returned to another world, reflected Japan's ambition to reach places no one had touched before. What began as a defensive safety measure was about to become the boldest underground experiment in modern science. While the world focused on surface megacities and magnetic high-speed trains, Japan's greatest machine was being assembled far below them. The birth of Kaguya. Far from the crowded cities, beyond the reach of public attention, construction began inside a restricted industrial complex near Niigata. The entire perimeter was patrolled by both private security and government guards. According to reports, access required biometric clearance and a signed secrecy oath. Inside that sealed compound, Japan's top engineers began assembling what some later described as the most ambitious engineering project in the nation's history. The blueprints revealed a structure larger than a nuclear submarine and packed with components so complex that even experienced technicians struggled to understand their full purpose. At its center stood a massive cylindrical core designed to hold the most advanced and dangerous element of the project, a cutter head that could function in temperatures where every known metal would normally vaporize. the cutter head quickly became the main focus of the design. Engineers from Hitachi Zosen developed superconducting coils capable of creating a magnetic field strong enough to shape and stabilize plasma. To prevent the coils from burning out, they were cooled with liquid helium and enclosed within layers of specially treated shielding. Reports claimed that during full operation, the rotating plasma field reached temperatures exceeding several thousand degrees Celsius, yet the inner systems remained completely stable and cool. For many researchers, the readings made no sense. Physicists warned that combining plasma energy with moving machinery could destabilize local magnetic lines and disrupt regional communications. But the government insisted the risk was acceptable. Billions of yen had already been invested, and Tokyo demanded progress. Powering the machine was a major challenge. To generate enough energy, Japan's energy agency reportedly redirected power from the JT-60SA fusion reactor in Naka, an experimental facility designed to recreate the same fusion process that powers the sun. This meant Kaguya became the first underground project in history to run partly on energy produced by nuclear fusion, rather than traditional electricity from the grid. Every single component was produced domestically to avoid leaks to foreign suppliers. Even minor hardware was forged and assembled under strict supervision. The pressure inside the complex was immense, but pride kept the teams working. Workers started referring to the machine as Yamato's heart, saying it symbolized Japan's determination to build what others called impossible. When the final assembly ended, Kaguya measured nearly half a kilometer in length. Its outer frame was coated with titanium ceramic armor designed to withstand both heat and crushing pressure. On the hull, workers engraved a short phrase, "To touch the unreachable." Those who stood before it said it looked less like industrial equipment and more like something built to explore another world. In reality, Japan had created the most advanced tunnel boring machine ever built, one powerful enough to reach places no human technology had ever touched. When Kaguya finally left its hangar, the world above had no idea that Japan was about to begin drilling into the planet itself. The descent begins. In early 2023, Japan's most guarded engineering experiment finally left the surface. After years of preparation, Kaguya was transported in parts to a quiet site outside Shizuoka, near the edge of the Philippine Sea Plate. The area was chosen for one reason. Beneath it runs a corridor of unstable rock that mirrors the strange pulse patterns once detected under Mount Fuji. Engineers believed this was where the anomaly reached its greatest depth, and that drilling here could lead them straight to its source. To outsiders, it looked like an ordinary construction project. In reality, it was the gateway to Japan's most secret experiment. Construction crews worked for months to create a massive vertical access shaft wide enough to hold the half-kilometer-long structure. When the shaft was complete, Kaguya was lowered piece by piece until the entire machine disappeared beneath the surface. Engineers on the surface watched from a sealed control room where screens displayed pressure, torque, and temperature data in real time. Once the descent began, the control center stayed active around the clock. Every vibration, every tremor, and every spike of temperature was logged and broadcast to a monitoring team in Tokyo. The first few kilometers were uneventful. The machine moved smoothly through layers of sediment and compressed clay. But at a depth of about 12 kilometers, the readings began to change. Seismic sensors started detecting a rhythmic pulse that did not resemble a natural earthquake. It repeated in exact intervals, almost like a coded signal. Some of the engineers dismissed it as feedback from the plasma field surrounding the drill head. Others, however, were unsettled. One technician later said the readings looked too organized to be random. According to reports, a small team was assigned to isolate the signal source, but nothing conclusive was found. By the time Kaguya reached 20 kilometers, the drill bit encountered a new obstacle. Instruments showed that the layer below was far denser than predicted. Samples collected through the machine's suction ports revealed fragments that did not match any known mineral compound in Japan's geological records. The rock reflected the plasma beam instead of melting under it. Operators increased torque to full power, expecting the machinery to overheat within minutes. Yet the opposite happened. The temperature readings began to fall instead of rise. The surrounding material cooled rapidly, reaching levels that defied thermodynamic expectations. For a machine built to endure heat, the sudden drop created confusion. Physicists from Tokyo University who were monitoring the data remotely sent an emergency request to pause operations. They wanted to investigate whether the temperature readings were false or the result of a software fault. The request was denied. According to accounts from people close to the project, senior officials inside the Ministry of Science and Technology insisted that the machine continue. They argued that any interruption could destabilize the plasma field and risk damaging the equipment. The debate lasted several hours, but the decision stood. Kaguya continued deeper, pushing through the strange material while the surrounding layers grew colder and more solid. Monitors in the control room showed frost beginning to form along the outer tunnel walls captured by internal cameras. Engineers watched in disbelief. The deeper the machine went, the more the environment seemed to freeze instead of burn. Some believed they were witnessing a new geological phenomenon. Others feared the sensors were malfunctioning, but the data was consistent across every system. The deeper Kaguya drilled, the colder the Earth became. Days later, satellite magnetometers across Japan began picking up distortions that seemed to mirror Kaguya's position underground. The distortion field. Within days of Kaguya drilling into the deeper layers, Japan's magnetic field began acting strangely. Satellite data showed ripples spreading across the region around Shizuoka, as if the area's magnetic north were being pulled downward. Scientists ruled out solar storms or normal magnetic fluctuations. The pattern matched the machine's route underground, suggesting the disturbance was moving with it, a shifting magnetic distortion that no one could explain. The first real-world effects appeared in the skies. Pilots reported their compasses drifting several degrees off true north. The deviation lasted for hours at a time, forcing airports to issue recalibration warnings and delay several flights. Commercial airlines switched temporarily to satellite-based navigation, while military aircraft were ordered to avoid the region entirely. The errors were small but consistent. Aviation officials contacted Japan's meteorological agency for answers, but the agency found no connection to weather or solar activity. In research laboratories across Tokyo and Kyoto, physicists and engineers debated what they were seeing. There was no natural process known to invert or distort magnetic gradients at that depth without consuming unimaginable amounts of energy. Some claimed it had to be a side effect of Kaguya's plasma ring bleeding energy into the surrounding rock. Others argued that the field's movement was too smooth and patterned to be random noise. According to unverified briefings, one senior researcher called it a moving magnetic pocket that should not exist inside the Earth. Inside the tunnel, cameras mounted on Kaguya's hull recorded equally unsettling changes. The molten tunnel walls from earlier phases were cooling into smooth, reflective glass. Under the machine's work lights, the passage looked metallic and seamless. Engineers believed the plasma field might be altering the atomic structure of the rock itself, turning ordinary minerals into conductive material. They began to notice unusual energy readings, including faint electrical currents along the tunnel's interior surface. The data hinted that Kaguya's drilling process was not only cutting rock, but also rewriting its physical properties. Despite the anomalies, Kaguya continued without failure. Its temperature stayed stable and no electrical systems overloaded. Every test indicated that the machine was operating well beyond its theoretical limits. According to project supervisors, this was the first confirmed instance of environmental and electromagnetic interference generated by an underground machine on such a scale. It suggested that Kaguya had changed the energy balance beneath Japan, though no one could say how. In the control room, the mood was a mix of excitement and concern. Some viewed the distortion as proof that the machine had unlocked a new form of subterranean energy transfer. Others feared that the growing interference could disrupt communication systems or destabilize the local crust. The scientists wanted to suspend drilling for further analysis, but the request was denied. Tokyo instructed the team to continue gathering data for as long as the equipment held steady. That decision kept Kaguya moving, deeper into the Earth, toward a region that would soon reveal something far stranger than magnetic distortion. The threshold. At a depth far beyond what engineers had planned for, Kaguya's sensors began registering something completely unexpected. A pattern that didn't resemble any known geological signal. The instruments detected what appeared to be a large hollow space directly beneath a dense lattice-like layer of rock surrounding the tunnel. From that void came low-frequency electromagnetic pulses, repeating every 22 seconds with perfect consistency. The timing was so precise it could not have been a random geological vibration. At first, the technicians in the control room believed it was interference from Kaguya's plasma drive. They halted drilling, ran multiple diagnostics, and even powered down several subsystems to isolate the noise. Yet the signal persisted, perfectly steady, even when the machine was completely idle. That meant the source was not inside Kaguya. It was coming from something in the ground below. When the team fed the data into their scanning software to visualize the source, the result was unlike anything they had ever seen. The mapping system revealed a perfectly spherical cavity, measuring roughly 1.6 kilometers across. Its boundary was uniform and symmetrical, showing no fractures, fault lines, or irregular formations. Under normal geological conditions, pressure at that depth should have crushed any hollow space instantly. Yet this one remained intact, smooth, balanced, and flawless. To verify the data, the crew performed a sonar sweep. The results came back blank. The sound waves vanished the moment they entered the space and did not return. It was as if the waves had been swallowed by nothing at all. Some researchers suggested a malfunction in the sensors, but secondary instruments showed the same readings. The evidence pointed to something truly unusual. An empty region inside solid rock where no material or gas seemed to exist. A few scientists described it as behaving like a vacuum, which should have been physically impossible at that depth. The control team could only watch as the data continued to update, showing that the cavity was real, stable, and emitting faint electromagnetic signals. Kaguya's operators adjusted the plasma cutters and slowly advanced the drill toward the edge of the cavity. The moment the cutter head made contact, every reading on the console spiked. Instruments registered what the engineers called negative resistance, a condition where energy output exceeded input. The machine appeared to be generating power from the contact itself. According to later reports, the effect lasted for several seconds before all systems overloaded. Inside the tunnel, Kaguya's cameras captured the image of the bore ahead folding inward, followed by an intense flash of light. The brightness overwhelmed every camera feed and sensor. Monitors in the control room went completely white, and for the next 17 minutes, every signal from Kaguya was lost. 17 minutes later, power returned, and what appeared on those monitors would rewrite physics itself. The impossible event. For exactly 1,021 seconds, Kaguya vanished from every system. The control room fell silent. Screens froze, then went dark. Communication lines stayed open, but there was no response from the machine, no data, and no signal. The tunnel feed, temperature logs, and magnetic readings all went blank at the same moment. Technicians checked for power loss, but the surface grid was stable. According to later reports, the entire facility went still, as if the Earth itself had paused. When contact finally returned, confusion spread across the control room. Kaguya's internal clock showed no interruption. To its systems, the machine had never stopped drilling. Yet its position data revealed it had advanced 12 kilometers beyond its theoretical range. The surrounding crust showed no signs of disruption. There was no displaced debris, no melted rock, and no vibration detectable by surface seismographs. It was as though the Earth had quietly opened and then sealed itself behind the machine. Engineers restored the camera feed, and what appeared on the monitors left the room in shock. The tunnel ahead was smooth and perfect, without any markings from the cutter head. The walls reflected light, as if they had been polished from within. At the far end of the tunnel, a faint white glow flickered. It was not fire or magma. The light was soft, steady, and alive, moving like water under glass. Every 22 seconds it pulsed gently, the same rhythm as the electromagnetic signal recorded before contact was lost. No one could explain what they were seeing. Radiation levels were normal. Temperature readings showed mild warmth, not heat. The glow was consistent, hovering at the edge of the frame as if it were watching them. According to unverified accounts, one of the researchers whispered that the light was responding to Kaguya's sensors. Others claimed it brightened each time the machine moved. Whether it was energy, gas, or something entirely unknown, no one could agree. In later discussions, several physicists compared the incident to a phenomenon first proposed by Max Sidorov, the prodigy who claimed that CERN's quantum AI had once opened a microscopic rift in space-time. Sidorov had warned that under the right conditions, when electromagnetic resonance, gravity, and energy fields align perfectly, a system could create a self-sustaining distortion capable of bridging space itself. What happened beneath Shizuoka mirrored his model almost exactly. The rhythmic pulse, the sudden disappearance of data, the flawless tunnel walls, and the reappearance marked by a living light. If Sidorov's theory is correct, Kaguya may have done what CERN only theorized. Not by colliding atoms, but by boring through the crust until it reached a zone where the structure of space weakened. To the engineers, it was a drilling anomaly. To the physicists who later reviewed the data, it was something far more profound, the first tangible sign that the boundaries between worlds might not be fixed after all. The team saved the footage and prepared to analyze the data, but the higher command intervened before they could proceed. Within minutes, every external link was shut off and access to the main feed was restricted. Whatever Kaguya had reached was no longer just a geological discovery. The shutdown and the silence. 2 days after the incident, Japan's Deep Earth data networks went offline for what was officially described as scheduled maintenance. The timing raised suspicion across the scientific community. Seismic stations across East Asia that had been tracking Kaguya's activity also went dark, all within the same 24-hour window. No explanation was given, and when the systems came back online, every file dated from the day of the event was missing. At the Shizuoka site, Kaguya was declared inoperable. According to reports from those who worked there, the machine was powered down, its core flooded with inert gas, and the access tunnel filled with concrete to a thickness of nearly 300 meters. The area was fenced off and reclassified as a restricted seismic zone. Within hours, all staff were required to surrender their devices and sign lifetime non-disclosure contracts. Several engineers who had worked on Kaguya's systems were transferred to unrelated projects and never spoke publicly again. The official government statement was brief. It claimed that the operation had been terminated due to a containment breach of geothermal gases that made the site unstable. No further details were released and no follow-up investigations were permitted. But internal data logs later leaked from an anonymous source suggested something different. Beneath the sealed site, sensors continued to record faint electromagnetic pulses, one every 22 seconds, identical to the rhythm Kaguya had detected before it disappeared from radar. A few fragments of material were reportedly smuggled out before the shutdown. The pieces were described as thin shards taken from the tunnel wall, smooth as glass and slightly translucent. When cooled in laboratory conditions, they reportedly levitated over magnets, behaving like superconductors at room temperature. The fragments vanished soon after. Some accounts claim they were transferred to private laboratories in Switzerland and South Korea, where their composition remains classified under energy research programs. After the closure, rumors began spreading among the remaining scientists. Some believed Kaguya had opened a direct energy channel within the Earth, one that could power cities for centuries if properly harnessed. Others warned that such a discovery might destabilize the planet's magnetic core if left unchecked. Whatever the truth was, the Japanese government never reopened the site. Satellite scans of the area now show nothing unusual on the surface. Yet independent researchers claim to detect the same 22-second pulse in nearby magnetic readings, steady and unbroken. It has never stopped. If Kaguya truly reached something beneath Japan that should not exist, what was the government trying to contain? And why does the pulse still continue? Share your thoughts in the comments.